we were talking about Megan Warren. I don't think she is still with us yet. So, Jim Lorraine, if you're there from American Warrior Partnership, are you available?
Are you okay? I'm right here. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, Jim, thank you. And once again, big kudos to you for the Atlanta American Warriors Partnership Symposium that you hosted. A fantastic event, and thank you for bringing us all together. You did a great job with that, Jim.
Hey, thanks, Jim. I really appreciate it. And last week after the symposium, I had an opportunity to talk to the West Coast group, and I want to just say, you know, we had Secretary Wilkie speak at our symposium this year, and without a doubt, he is the most impressive secretary in my history that I've seen. And what I appreciate most is that it's personal for him. And I think if anyone has an opportunity to meet or go to listen to Secretary Wilkie, you should all take it. Thanks. I've got, you know, Tony Davis, you're going to put the slides up for me here, right?
Yeah, Jim, I got you.
Okay. While I'm waiting, I just, you know, we came out of Atlanta, Jim, and now we're waiting for Florence to show up on the East Coast. So down here in South Carolina and Georgia, we're just waiting to get hit. Tony, do you have the slides up? There you go. Perfect. Thanks. Yeah, thank you. Number one, I want to thank the VA for giving us the opportunity to present this task force update. And I see Richard right there next to you, Jim. Thanks for being there, being part of the task force. For those who can see the screen, the guy on the right to the left of Jim's hand, Richard was from San Antonio, was a big participant. And hopefully what you're going to find from this task force update is that this is not about America's Warrior Partnership. This is about the CVEBs. They did a great job of coming together, doing a lot of work, and identifying some opportunities, I think. Next slide, Tony. Thanks. So a year ago at our symposium, the current Deputy Secretary of the VA, Tom Bowman, asked if we would take a look at bringing a group of CVEBs together and identifying measures, metrics, and outcomes that they could use in their communities to sort of drive their path forward, to identify where they were strong and where they needed to work on it, and to sort of give an outside perspective. We contracted with a great group called Cicero, who worked closely with our CVEBs, with the CVEBs that participated, to identify a methodology and to develop these measures, metrics, and outcomes. A lot of people ask, well, how did you pick the 10 CVEBs that were part of the task force? And I have to tell you, one of our best partners in this was the VA. And working with Jim's folks and Carmen Gamble, we specifically went out and asked for CVEBs that were from large communities and had been doing it for a while, small communities and were emerging, small communities and had been doing it for a while, and large communities. We wanted a diversity. They represented east to west, north to south, and you'll see that here in just a second on these slides. We wanted to go into this with not the perspective of being draconian and directive, but we wanted to go into this and to build something that was flexible, so that a small community could do it, a large community could do it, and that it lend to the autonomy of the CVEBs. Again, as I mentioned, we had 10 CVEBs, but we had 30 organizations represented, we were looking for a 60-40 split between national organizations and CVEB leads. And the reason the national organizations were picked because they all have a chapter-based or a local presence. There may be national organizations, but they had a local presence. And then again, our partners at the VA, we couldn't have asked for more. Not only the VA, but we had DOD and we had DOL, Department of Labor there too. Next slide, Tony. This is the timeline. Basically, go one more back, Tony. No, you're going forward.
Hey, Jim, I'm having some technical issues here. I'm trying to get you to the right slide, but my computer's
Nope.
not cooperating.
No worries. So basically, when we talk about the timeline that we did, there were a couple of pre-calls, 3 in-person meetings where everyone met up in Washington D.C. It was a great events, I should say. The Secretary of the VA recognized the CVEBs for all their work that they'd been putting into it, and then in between, everyone had homework. Just like school, it was tough to get everybody to do their homework, but we succeeded. But I have to tell you, the most diligent and most engaged were the CVEBs. I'll hold Tony until you get to.
Hey, apologies. I think I'm going to have to restart, Jim.
Okay. What I'll talk about in the next slide is are the participants and where they were from. So again, we have San Antonio, we have Winchester, Virginia, we had Delaware, Philly area, we had Orange County, California, Colorado Springs out in Colorado. We had Richard, help me out here because I don't have the slide right in front of me.
South Carolina, the Carolinas were there.
Yeah, we had, that's right, Greenville, South Carolina. I can forget them. Yeah.
Give me a second, and I'll pull up the list too.
No problem, I got it right here too.
And as Jim's doing that, I'll jump in real quick. Jim,
Yeah, thanks, Richard.
And I will tell you this, so being a collective body and having American Warrior Partnership bring us all together, with all the VA leadership was there was truly remarkable. So several of us also attended the symposium in Atlanta, and I can tell you one thing, that we actually are all friends now, we communicate, we're still sharing ideas. So to bring the group together the way it was fashioned was absolutely, truly amazing. And it was quite humbling to be in a room with others that have been doing this a little while, and then newer ones that were just being established. But above all, hearing from VA leadership that they are committed to strengthening the relationship and taking a back seat. So normally you don't hear government taking a back seat, they normally want to drive. And you've even heard it here in the room as we're getting this together. They actually want to take a back seat. They want to learn from what each community is doing and how they can interject. And Jim said it quite eloquently at the symposium, where we want to weave it into the body of the VA, not just of what we're doing locally, but it be woven into the thread of the VA as a whole. And to me, hearing that, where you hear the bad stuff, this actually helps turn that around, where the VA is doing great work. It's just to highlight those bad situations are the ones that always get highlighted, but you rarely hear of the good things. And that's across everywhere, from nonprofits to big government. So that was quite amazing to hear.
Thanks, Richard. I appreciate it. And Tony, when you're ready, our CVEB partners were great. VA partners were great. The other communities, I don't want to leave anybody out. We had Pittsburgh, which was fantastic to have them. They have a big America Serves network up there. Coastal Carolinas, which is Wilmington area. So pray for them a little bit coming up here. And then northeastern Ohio, so the Cleveland area. in terms of the national nonprofits, it was a great mix. You've heard of IVMF and America Serves. So there's America's Warrior Partnership, IVMF, United Way with Mission Continues. We have the National Veterans Intermediary out of the Bob Woodruff Foundation, the Bush Institute, American Red Cross, all the, red, white, and blue, all the groups you'd think were in a community. And their role as a national organizations were to inform, thanks Tony, their role was to inform the CVEBs about their metrics with their experience, but not to direct them. And so what you're going to see is from the CVEBs. Next slide, Tony. So what we started out with was we did a survey. We thought that it was great that we had 10 CVEBs, but we wanted to have a greater opinion. Thanks to Carmen, she shared a survey document out with 144 CVEBs. Of the 144, 44 completed the survey. We feel that was a pretty good response. Of those, we asked them, overall, do you like the idea of CVEB initiative? 33% responded, and you can see the vast majority were satisfied. Some were neutral, and then a couple were unsatisfied, but not a couple, but it's just 1%. So it's really one group was unsatisfied. But overall, the thought is the CVEBs the CVEB program is something that is of value and that to the communities. Next slide. The next one, yeah, there you go, thanks. The next thing we looked at was we asked them, how many, do you feel like having metrics is important to your CVEB program? And the vast majority said yes. Not only did we ask that, but we said, if you were going to measure, how many focus areas would you have? And you can see that it's anywhere between 6 and 1. But the number, once you got above 6, they weren't interested in measuring that much. So what we take away from this slide was the CVEBs feel like measurement is important, but don't over measure. Next slide, please. This is what we asked the question, what do you consider, we asked them to look at all of the things that they measure today and what's most important to you. And so what you see is outreach, mental health, employment and unemployment, homelessness, referral networks, etc. And then you see way down here, probably around 5 to 10, is suicide prevention. I just want to highlight that as we go into the next slides, because you see how, as we sort of sharpen the tip of the pencil, how things change. Next slide, Tony. So then what we did was we asked, all right, since these are the ones you see or you want to pursue, what do you feel are your top 5, right? So top 5 is outreach, mental health, suicide prevention, homelessness, and unemployment. So you see suicide prevention moved up when you started to talk about what are your top 5 efforts that you want to do, right? Then we said, okay, of all those, what's your number 1? And suicide prevention was the number 1 effort that the CVEBs deemed important. Access to health care, compensation and benefits, rural access, mental health, and unemployment. And what you see is this trend, right? You see the same group in the top 5 to 10 of things that the CVEBs felt were important. Next slide, Tony. Thank you. So then what we did was we looked at it and we said, okay, we know what you want to measure, but what do you do, right? So what is CVEBs? You can be a valuable resource, but what do you do? And not only what do you do, but what do you want to do? And in this slide, what you see is what CVEBs felt like their greatest role in the community was the sharing of information, and they also felt like that was probably the most important thing that they could do as an organization for their community. The next piece was coordination, and you see that there's a little bit of a difference here. So they felt like coordination their current role was heavy, it should be more important as their future role. But if you look at the next column, advocacy in terms of desired role overtook coordination. And personally, having worked in this space for so long, I think a lot of that is they're one and the same. Through coordination, you are an advocate, and I think that those could be interchanged. But what was interesting is a lot of it is how do you educate? How do you collect data? Accountability. Accountability was on the bubble for the CVEBs. It was a split vote. 50% of the CVEBs felt like accountability. They should monitor the services provided in the community and maintain accountability. The other 50% felt like that wasn't really their role. So I just wanted to point that out. Next slide. So here's the recommendations to date, and this is what we presented to Jim and Dr. Davis and the team in the VA for the CVEBs to implement, and that so everyone who participated, the vast majority felt like there's no mandate on the priorities of individual CVEBs must choose to focus on the area. So there wasn't going to be a list of outcomes we were going to measure, but there should be a core list. And then provide a recommended list of issue areas that they can. So basically, if you think back to that previous slide, there were about 15 areas that you look at. We said that there should be a core set of metrics that the CVEBs look at, so you're measuring apples to apples to apples. So what Richard's measuring in San Antonio is similar or equal to what Denton is measuring in Orange County, California, or Charlie's measuring in Greenville, South Carolina. And those areas were outreach, mental access to mental health, access to health care, suicide prevention, homelessness, employment, and education. And when we say monitor, we know that in a community there's someone who can provide you with these, like the suicide prevention. What efforts have we done? What's the rate of suicide within our community? What's the VHA? What's the enrollment in VA healthcare? And what does it look like? What's the access to care? Homeless, there's a lot of homeless programs that can come and report into the CVEBs to sort of keep track of where things are. So those are what we strongly recommended. Next slide, Rich. Tony. Yeah, and then, so again, to go back, just to reiterate, we strongly recommended that they include, their role includes sharing of information, coordination and convening, data collection, and education and leadership. Andy Martinez asked asked me, I think it was the last time we talked, she said, what does it look like for a leader, for a good organization to be co-chairs? And I said, I think if you go back to what the CVEB's role should be, it's someone who can bring people together, can communicate openly, can collect data and recognizes the value of it, and most importantly, that they're a leader in the community, recognized. And I explained the split in accountability. So what we've done is we've created a resource guide. And the resource guide is more of, it goes in depth into, if you're going to measure homelessness, what are some of the resources? Where can you get that information from? What does that look like? And the resource guide isn't a list of programs. It's more for the CVEB to use it as a document to find where to find the data. That resource guide is going to be finalized here within the next 2 weeks, and we've been talking to the VA and the CVEBs about how you implement it. How do we get it out to the CVEBs to get it in their hands so that they can take a look at it, and how can we also provide some additional services to them? And then on the last slide, it's sort of a document. As I said, the resource directory. We're on the next slide, Tony. Yeah, this is while there's other potential additions, you can see it's what's the CVEB mission, the structure, the roles, all of this is, the VA's done a great job of capturing the mission, the structure, the bylaws, charters, et cetera. And we'll just incorporate it into the resource guide. But then we'll add what other resources and partners are there, and what's the metrics and reporting, an overview on that. And with that, hopefully I got you back on schedule too, and kept you on schedule. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Yes, this is Lee and Tyler. Will we get a copy of this CVEB Task Force strategy document?
Yes. So from us, that's what we're working with the VA to go back to. And Jim, I can't see. Are you still on you're right there, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm in San Antonio with them.
great. So we're talking about Tyler. We're talking with Jim and his team about how do we take the next step. And for me, as America's Warrior Partnership, I think Richard can tell you, we were an organizer, not a director, and we've made sure that we stayed. We kept our fingers out of what the CVEBs were doing. And I think, in my mind, we're going to turn the CVEB strategy document and the CVEB everything that we created to the CVEBs, to the 10 CVEB task force leads, working with the VA to figure out how do we get it out to you in Tyler, and how are we responsive to you? How are they responsive to you in terms of best practices, and how do you implement it? Does that sound good?
Yes, sounds wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Any other questions?
Hey, Jim, this is Eric down in San Antonio. Hey, we appreciate the information that you provided. We have our resident expert, Richard, here, that's been with you through several outings, and so we're going to bleed him dry when it comes to understanding everything about what the task force did and the strategies that came from it. So we do appreciate your training, and we're going to go ahead and move on to the next one.
Got it. Well, thank you very much, everyone. And Jim, look forward to seeing you soon. And Richard,